Joyce Polino Crane. Today, my guest is Senator Ed Kennedy of Lowell, Westford, etc. Welcome, Senator. I'm glad to see you are back here with us again.
Thank you
We
very
try
much.
to meet every couple of months.
Thank you very much, Joyce. It's a pleasure for me to be back on the show, even though I think this is the second one we're doing on Zoom. So maybe by the time we do the next one, we'll be back in the studio.
Yes, I hope so.
So, you know, one of the things I guess that I wanted to report, I think as most people know, there was the legislature recently passed a $48 billion budget for fiscal year 22. And there's a few items in that budget that probably would be of interest to viewers. One is that I was able to get a $50,000 as a local initiative into the budget to for the safety upgrades to school and town buildings in the town of Westford. I think that there's a so I think that that's good. I think that's there's an ongoing task force in Westford that deals with that, and that 50,000 should be helpful as they continue their work to make the public buildings and school buildings safer in Westford for everybody that uses them. Another item that was in the budget was the film tax credit. So the film tax credit in Massachusetts, which has, you know, attracted a lot of film productions in recent years, I think 230 maybe in the past 10 years, was set to sunset in a couple of years. So in this budget, we made the film tax credit permanent, and I think that that will be good for the overall economy. When production companies come into Massachusetts, they end up spending a lot of money locally, you know, at restaurants and at hardware stores and other places like that. And so I think that it's and also too, there's a lot of people in Massachusetts that are employed in that industry, and there's a lot of people in Westford that are employed in that industry. So I think that overall, that's a good thing. Excuse me. And those are, you know, two highlights in the budget for this coming year.
You mentioned that there's a studio in Air, which is interesting.
Yes,
yeah.
There's a studio in Devon's, and they film a TV show there right now. And there are plans in the works for a second building, a second studio at Devon's. And that's something that probably will happen now that we've got the film tax credit, but as a permanent fixture in Massachusetts. But when it was due to sunset in 2 more years, I don't think that they were going to move forward with that building, because they anticipated that most of the production companies would leave Massachusetts and go to other states where the pastures would be greener. Mm-hmm. I also just finished co-chairing the COVID-19 Cultural Impact Commission, which was comprised of people from different areas of the Commonwealth and people who are involved in different aspects of culture and the arts, and so we just finished that up on June 30th and filed a report with the legislature, which will be which hopefully will spawn legislation that will be directed at helping those industries recover from the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, very interesting. What else you got on board?
Well, there's several things. One thing that I'm pretty excited about is I did file a piece of legislation this year that would provide for a building authority for public safety buildings. So right now, I think a lot of people realize that that we have that for schools. There's a building authority for schools, so that if a community is going to build a school or even do renovations to schools, they can go and apply for this money from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA, and they will help them with the financing of that. I filed a bill this year that would do the same thing for police and fire buildings or stations. And so school building authority is funded through the sales tax in Massachusetts. And the public safety authority would be funded the same way. And I think it would probably be a lot less money, because schools, new schools in the Commonwealth, cost between, say, 2 and 300 million on the whole, whereas police and fire stations probably fall between the 25 to $50 million mark. So it would be less money required, but I do think it would be really helpful for communities that have not enough buildings, public safety buildings, and also for communities that have buildings that are in need of repair, or that are just so old that they really need to be replaced.
Remind us of the towns and city that you cover.
In addition to Lowell and Westford, I also cover Groton, Pepperell, Dunstable, and Tingsboro.
Thank you.
So 6 communities, and it's a pretty diverse district, and I kind of like it that way, so that I've got, there's an urban component to my district. There is a suburban component, which I would put Westford in that category. But I've also got rural parts of my district where there's a lot of farms, many more than what I realized. And so, I've joined a couple of caucuses since I've been in the legislature, and one of those caucuses is a Gateway Cities Caucus. But another one is the Rural Communities Caucus. So it's pretty interesting, but I do think that it's good to stay in touch with both of those groups and the other legislatures that come from those communities, and what those problems are.
Very interesting. So what else? Anything else going on?
Well, let me see. I did file a bill that would request $200 million to rebuild the Commonwealth's cultural future. This is a bill that has been very well received. It has not had, it's in my committee. It hasn't had a hearing yet, but it will have that hearing in September. And I'm pretty confident that that bill will pass. And at least at a less of the bill reads no less than $200 million, and so I hope it passes, but I hope it passes at probably greater than $200 million. That money would come from the federal money that's come into the Commonwealth, but I think it's really needed. Arts and culture in Massachusetts has taken a big hit. To the tune of about $600 million in lost revenue, and a huge amount.
Because of the pandemic?
Yeah, because of the pandemic, and also the loss of jobs for people who are, and so like the restaurant industry and probably every other industry in Massachusetts, there's everybody's struggling to get employees back. So you've got restaurants that are doing 2 things. They're either limiting their hours during the day, or limiting the days that they're open, because they're not able to fully staff the restaurant for the whole week yet. That same holds true for venues and other areas like that. There's a lot of workers that have that left the industry. They would be, many of them are workers that you would describe as gig workers. And they just haven't come back. And for a lot of them, maybe they won't come back at all. They'll do something else. But this bill would be aimed at trying to help that part of the Massachusetts economy recover.
Last night, the planning board dealt with a question of whether the town should allow a drive-through window at McDonald's. And I don't know if you had, I don't know how much of this you may or may not know, but so town meeting had covered this issue in an article, and the voters turned down this request to have all of the restaurants along Route 110 in Westford to allow them to have drive-through windows. And then it was brought, because it was shot down in town meeting, then it was brought to the planning board, and they ended up continuing the hearing for another week or 2. But there was a large crowd last night in the meeting room of town hall, and people had, definite opinions on yet why the town should or shouldn't. And I was wondering if you have any position on this.
I'm not sure that I have a position on it. I think let's take drugstores, for instance. I think there are some people, because of the pandemic again, that favor drugstores that have a drive-through window, so that you don't have to go into the drugstore and you're able to just get your drugs at the window without having to get out of your car. I think that overall, drive-throughs are just convenient for people. They're probably quicker, and the only detriment I can see to drive-in windows would be if they cause traffic congestion. So, there may be some areas or some retailers along the 110 corridor that don't have enough space to really accommodate a drive-in window and all of the space that's, the lane that you need for the drive-in window.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think if people are able to satisfy all of that it's a convenience that I think most of us have become accustomed to.
Yeah, definitely. Mothers with very young children in the back that fall asleep and you don't want to take them out of the car seat. So that's another contingency
Right.
of benefits. So anything else that you want to share with Westford residents?
I do have several other bills. I've got several environmental bills that I think are interesting. One thing that people should realize is come to know is that the Baker administration intends to prohibit mattresses from being put out and going into landfills starting in the early fall. And so I do have a piece of legislation that would address the recycling of mattresses. So, I know people don't think about this, but really mattresses are made up of, there's a lot of metal that can be recycled. There's a lot of wood that can be recycled, and so forth and so on. And, UTEC, for instance, which is really grown and is now probably evident throughout the Merrimack Valley, they do a pretty good business with mattress recycling. And they'll, if you put a mattress out and if you call UTEC, they'll come pick up the mattress and take it away, which is good. But you're not going to be able to just send your mattress to the landfill in the fall. And so we really need to make some changes, or at least to get ready for when that happens. There are several states in the country, California, I think Rhode Island and Connecticut, they all have legislation dealing with mattress recycling. Mm-hmm. We don't have that in Massachusetts yet, but I think we're gonna need to have that, especially if we're going to prohibit mattresses from being put in landfills going forward.
Well, that's interesting. It just makes me think about car batteries. Now that everybody's starting, not everybody, but now that electric cars are becoming more popular and more in use, I just wonder where the batteries are going to go when those, when 10 years from now, when those die.
Right. I also just testified on a bill calling for more caseworkers in the mental health industry. I've had a lot of calls from constituents who have family situations where if somebody in their family was able to have a caseworker or somebody that was mentoring them, that things would be a lot better. And I think that that's something that's sorely needed. And I think everybody in the Commonwealth agrees that there is a shortage of caseworkers and people to work with people who face those challenges. And these would be for cases that would be non-residential, but we're still some sort of outreach and it is still required and certainly would be helpful. And I really think that would make a difference. And hopefully we'll see that legislation pass this year as well.
Yes, hope so. I don't think there's a family in Massachusetts that hasn't been touched by mental illness.
Right.
Anything else before we go?
I think that's probably all I've got for now, but I'd be happy to come back. I always like coming on to your show, and maybe the next time we can do it right in the studio.
Yes, I'd love that. And I always look forward to you coming. The door is always open. And I'm glad we can do this. Maybe we've been doing it once every quarter or,
Yes,
loosely, and maybe we can do it a little more often.
that would be great. But thank you very much for having me on. And until next time, I'll see you later.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
For WestfordCAT News, this is Joyce Colino Crane.